Our story begins at a restaurant in New York. A man enters and is recognized as someone from the news. However, a masked man soon appears and shoots the newsman dead. Elsewhere, Carnage swings through New York City. Things used to be much simpler for the sociopath. There were no rules, and he was good at it. Now, Carnage is one of the good guys. He hears a woman in trouble. Though his initial instinct is to cut the woman in half, he knows that this isn't right. He's seen this on TV, and this woman is a damsel in distress. Carnage swings in to save the day and punches the attacking man's eye out of its socket. Another man attacks Carnage with a knife, but the symbiote can do knives too and cuts the man's arm off. Carnage wonders if this was too much and laments his new conscience. Meanwhile, the woman is very upset and attacks Carnage as the man with the knife was her pimp. Realizing the woman is also a criminal, he knocks her out too. As both eyes stayed in her head, Carnage considers this perfect superhero work and is quite pleased with himself. However, he is dismayed when a crowd gathers and reacts with terror. Elsewhere, a man enters a massage parlor, but is approached by a gunman. The attacker is Sin Eater, although he claims to be a different person than the one from before. The man struggles and manages to pull off the Sin Eater's mask, revealing a gruesome skull before the Sin Eater shoots the man dead. We then go to a news report, revealing that the man who was just shot was an anchor on this channel. The woman reporting this, Alice Gleason, tears up over her coworker being killed before stating how it now appears that there is a criminal murdering newscasters. Watching her, Carnage admires her emotion and concludes she is a good person. However, when the camera's cut, it is revealed that Alice was just acting and crying to earn ratings. Alice wants a promotion, but her boss says she needs to bring in news regarding a superhero or villain. Given that a killer is targeting newscasters, Alice gets a police escort home. However, the cop soon notices that they are not alone in the apartment. The Sin Eater quickly murders the police officer and then absorbs his sins. As he is about to kill Alice, Carnage bursts in. Happily singing, the former villain grabs Sin Eater's gun and pulls it to the shooter's own head, causing the Sin Eater to shoot himself in the face. Alice faints and Carnage takes her away, not realizing that the Sin Eater is still alive. Alice wakes up some time later to see Carnage staring her down, asking her for help. Carnage wants to be a great hero and needs Alice to teach him how. Realizing she is tied up on the side of a bridge, the reporter lets out a terrified scream. Every hero has an origin, but nobody's origin is as muddled as Carnage's. The symbiote has confused Cletus's memories. Did he watch his father kill his stepmother, or was it his stepfather who killed his foster mother? Carnage remembers things wrong, but it all worked when it felt right. Now Carnage is more confused than ever. He looks back on his memories for the first time with guilt, and it's almost more than he can bear. Carnage is desperate for redemption and love, but needs help. On the side of a bridge, Carnage's captive audience screams for help. The woman is a newscaster named Alice Gleason. Carnage explains that he is a hero now, and he will not harm Alice. He says that he needs her help being a hero, as he doesn't know anything about being a good person. Alice says she will help him if he promises not to harm her, as good people don't break promises. Carnage accepts and promises not to harm her. Meanwhile, two parole officers are looking for Emil Gregg, also known as the Sin Eater. They go to his last known whereabouts in Bumtown. When they find him, they discover he is dead, and that he has been for some time. Alice has Carnage take them to a graveyard, where Carnage can begin to make amends for the mistakes of his past. However, they are not alone, and Carnage attacks a man, assuming he is a grave robber. But the man actually works for the cemetery and is a grave digger, so Alice has Carnage apologize. Wanting to get footage of Carnage, Alice tells the symbiote that he needs to make a confession for priests to see on the internet. Carnage begins a confession, saying that he wants to kill people all the time, but is trying very hard not to. Alice sends the footage to her boss, who contacts the police. They rush to the cemetery, but Carnage and Alice have left, and the gravedigger tells the police to follow the webs. Carnage and Alice come across a bank robbery, and Carnage quickly attacks the bank robbers, showing them the dangers of firearms. He then throws a car into the bank, lighting it on fire, reasoning that the bank can't be robbed if it's already been burnt down. But Alice says that that is no good and that he needs to put out the fire. At the newsroom, the Sin Eater arrives and demands to know where he can find Alice Gleason. Her boss says that the entire world is watching her right now on television. As Carnage puts out the fire, the police arrive in force. Not wanting to sign any autographs, Carnage leaves. The police pursue, but don't fire because they don't want to hurt Alice. However, one of the helicopters gets too close to Carnage, and his web gets caught in the copter's blades. As the helicopter crashes into a building above, Carnage drops Alice, but manages to catch her before she hits the ground. However, the Sin Eater finds her and captures her. She calls to Carnage for help, but the Sin Eater manages to get away. Carnage says that he will save her, and that nothing will stop him. The issue explosively picks up where we last left Carnage. Knocked out by the blast, Carnage has a vision of himself in heaven. He says it would be so easy to just kill everyone, but an angel tells him not to be a jerk and to go save Alice. The angel is suddenly taken by a demonic version of the Sin Eater, and Carnage wakes up, swearing to find Alice and this green ski mask guy. Elsewhere, green ski mask guy drags Alice into the sewers. Inside, the Sin Eater claims he is the real Emil Gregg, and the man caught as the Sin Eater long ago during the origins of Venom was an imposter. The Sin Eater reveals he is the result of a spell cast to make him a holy ghost of Emil Gregg, explaining his unusual appearance and abilities. He then prepares to kill Alice and feed on her sins. Meanwhile, Carnage climbs the Empire State Building. Alice could be anywhere, and Carnage just hopes he can stretch enough. He somehow is able to find Alice and pulls her to safety. But the Sin Eater pursues Carnage, and the battle between the two begins. Green Ski Mask Guy can smell the sin on Carnage, but Carnage says that if the Sin Eater wants his sins, he can have them all. The Sin Eater cries out in pain due to the enormous amount of guilt on Carnage's soul, and the spirit soon swells to a colossal size. The Sin Eater claims he feels like a god, but Carnage says he feels great too, and has just one more sin left, the worst of them all. As Carnage confesses to his last sin, the final piece of energy is too much for the Sin Eater, and the killer explodes. Cletus finds the corpse of the Sin Eater, and thanks him for absolving the former villain of his sins. Carnage finally has a chance to start over. Suddenly, Carnage's head is blown off by Alice. He quickly recovers, and is confused as she runs off towards the police. Alice explains her final lesson to Carnage. Nobody is all good, and most people are hardly good at all. Carnage is hurt and betrayed, but Alice yells at the police to fire on her captor. Cletus learns her true final lesson, that to be a real hero, he must be alone. A young man sees an ad in a newspaper offering people a chance to reinvent themselves. He goes to the location in the ad and declares, "I'm John Myers, and I want to be a supervillain." However, the Hobgoblin is no longer teaching people to be villains, and his goons quickly thrash him. This is now a house of heroes. Roderick Kingsley stops the beating, as all are welcome. Since the events in Genosha, Kingsley has reinvented himself as a hero, and now has a best-selling book out. For a fee, the Hobgoblin will now create a unique identity and costume for people who want to be superheroes. With this plan, the Hobgoblin has achieved tremendous success. To an adoring crowd, Kingsley explains that even though he's on the side of good, his identity and brand remains the same, as he is the one true Hobgoblin. The crowd rushes to buy his merchandise, and when asked by his assistant how he is going to keep up the momentum, Kingsley says he will do so through the first rule of business, leading by example. In Brooklyn, the remnants of the Goblin's army have captured one of the Hobgoblin's men, thinking it might be Kingsley. He is quickly killed by the Goblin King, who understands the confusion. The Hobgoblin is unrecognizable these days, acting as a hero and becoming the city's guardian. The Goblin King is not amused and prepares to go to war with Kingsley. He only needs one recruit, Lily Hollister, also known as Menace. Though depowered by Spider-Man, he is sure that she will return to him, as the goblins always survive. However, Lily has lost her memory and instead goes to the Hobgoblin's headquarters. Recognizing her, Kingsley tells his bouncer to let her in. The Goblin King attacks the police as he holds children hostage. Luckily, help arrives in the form of everyone's favorite new hero, the Hobgoblin. But as the children look over their 2 goblin-themed options, they scream in terror. The Hobgoblin pins the king to the wall before taking a picture of himself saving the children. The kids are then rescued by Missile Mate, one of the new heroes created by Hobgoblin. The Goblin King is furious and attacks Kingsley. But Hobgoblin does not seem interested in the fight and instead just offers King a copy of his new book. The king demands that he get a portion of the Hobgoblin's earnings, but Kingsley refuses to talk business outside of his office. The Hobgoblin leaves, and out of frustration, the Goblin King levels the building. The police remark that their work is done here all thanks to the Hobgoblin, and wonder what crazy adventures he'll get up to next. The Hobgoblin in Music to My Ears. The Hypno Hustler has hypnotized children into giving them all the money made from the school dance. But the Hobgoblin makes quick work of his hypnotic music, and the children turn on the villain. Bullying isn't cool. Sticking up for your friends is the right thing to do, so don't make good manners a chore. Make them a hobby. Back at headquarters, the Hobgoblin has a meeting with his newly created heroes. When Missile Mate remarks that the cameras made it hard for him to crack skulls the way he prefers, Kingsley threatens him and says that as long as Missile Mate wears the costume that Kingsley designed, nobody is to tarnish the Hobgoblin's new image. Filurch, the Goblin King, arrives and quickly takes out the Hobgoblin's henchmen. The king repeats his demand from earlier, but Kingsley has no interest in sharing his wealth. When Phil threatens the Hobgoblin, Lily Hollister, in a new outfit and identity known as Queen Cat, says he will have to go through her first. Lily beats up Phil, who is shocked at her presence, and says that they had a pact together. But the Hobgoblin's team of heroes proved to be a strong match for the Goblin King, so he flees, leaping out the window and flying away, but not before leaving a message for Lily. Lily is confused as she has no memory of him, but Kingsley tells her that even if Phil knows anything, he's probably the cause of her memory loss. The Hobgoblin then says it's time to put on his good face for the public. The Hobgoblin in Don't Bank on It. Not an advertisement. The Tinkerer prepares a bank robbery, but the Hobgoblin arrives to stop him. However, this won't be easy as the Tinkerer knows all the Hobgoblin's old tricks and says he is ready for anything. Luckily, the hero has his all-new Hobstoppers, which come in 3 different flavors. Wow, these are good. The flavor lasts forever. Good, cause that's how long you're going away for. Back at his headquarters, Phil Urich returns, outraged at the Hobgoblin's actions. However, a visitor arrives soon after, and Phil thinks that Lily has returned. Instead, it is Missile Mate. He says that he has no loyalty to the Hobgoblin and that he can help the Goblin King. But Phil says that he already has an army made up of half the villains that Hobgoblin had created and then later abandoned. Phil demands to know what Missile Mate could possibly bring to the table. Missile Mate replies that he has the other half of the abandoned villains. The issue begins with the mayor proclaiming today to be Hobgoblin Day, celebrating the rise of New York's greatest new hero, the Hobgoblin. Roderick Kingsley eagerly begins his speech, apparently unaware that his minion, Missile Mate, has made a deal with the Goblin King and prepared a trap for the ceremony. With the villains the Hobgoblin abandoned, and an amnesiac Lily Hollister, the Goblin King is certain he will get his revenge on Roderick Kingsley. As the Hobgoblin delivers his speech, Missile Mate is waiting to confirm that Kingsley is indeed here. When the Hobgoblin takes off his mask, Missile Mate strikes with a flaming sword, but is surprised to find it is just a hologram. Kingsley was expecting such treachery, and the Goblin King and his villains begin to fight. A brawl erupts as the 2 goblins battle, and the Hobgoblin says that the Goblin King is trying too hard to be like Norman Osborn. Kingsley decides to help Phil Urich be more like Norman Osborn by impaling him with a glider. He then reveals that Lily was acting as a double agent and warned him about the attack. But Missile Mate has one more trick up his sleeve. He has prepared a detonator which will trigger explosives attached to the badge of the Hobgoblin's heroes. Kingsley says this was clever, but he knows how to get out of this, and suddenly kills all the minions himself. Missile Mate is shocked and surrenders, And when the police arrive, the Hobgoblin shows this was all just another ruse using holograms, and the heroes are fine. Steve Rogers appears on the scene and says he does indeed believe that the Hobgoblin has changed. He states that Queen Cat will need to lead this team of heroes, as the former villain will have a new job, a position on the Avengers, which Kingsley eagerly accepts. Hello and welcome to Comic Island. My name is Arden, and this is my recap and review of Axis, Carnage and Hobgoblin. So I noticed Marvel is putting out the collected trade paperback of these two Axis tie-ins, and I figured it would be nice to put out a collected recap and review for those of you who haven't had a chance to see all of these or would like to watch them all together. If you want my reviews of each issue, you can find them through the single issue review videos on our channel. Otherwise, I'm just going to focus on reviewing these comics as if they were collected together in one bundle, like in the upcoming graphic novel. On this merit, I really enjoyed both the Carnage and Hobgoblin series. Collected together, they work really well as Axis tie-ins, and showcase these two very fun villains in a new light. At only 3 issues each, they aren't very big tie-in comics, and they both feel like they have endings that are a bit rushed, but it's worth the ride for some really solid fun. Surprisingly, it's Carnage that really stands out here. I wouldn't have expected that. Don't get me wrong, the Hobgoblin is funny, featuring a writer from Robot Chicken and some phenomenal sight gags. But it gets old after a while, and it wasn't anything that memorable. But it's the Carnage miniseries that I feel they do a really good job of taking the idea of Cletus becoming a hero and just running with it in the craziest way possible. The end result is some of the best fun and dialogue to come out of the Axis tie-ins and this event on the whole. So if you enjoyed the Axis story, I do recommend you check out these two tie-ins. They're worthwhile as two really enjoyable stories with only minor faults that should bring a smile to the face of any Marvel fan. Let me know what you think in the comments section below. We also have a Facebook and Twitter page if you'd like to follow us and stay updated on our channel, and a website with a complete reading order and all of the recaps and reviews of events like Axis or Spider-Verse. And finally, don't forget to like, subscribe, and keep reading comics.